Hello, my name is Jeff Stauffer, Community Relations Director with Elville and Associates, and welcome to our webinar today featuring Eric Jorgensen, Special Needs Planner with Planning Across the Spectrum. Today we'll be discussing Putting It All Together, Diagnosis to Adulthood Guide of Navigating the Disability World. You saw Eric's biography in the invitation. It's also in the chat feature in the dashboard, and he may have a few words to say about himself when he begins the presentation. We're very privileged to have him here today. We were introduced to Eric by a good friend of our firm who I think is on the call today, Mr. Joe Sperling of Joe Sperling Insurance. So hello, Joe, and thank you for the introduction to Eric. So I, along with everyone here at Elville and Associates, hope you're faring well today and during these times, and we thank you for taking time out of your day to be part of our educational event. So how this will work, if you've not been on one of our webinars yet, you are on mute. However, if you have questions, and we really want to encourage questions throughout the webinar, don't be shy. Please note them in the box on the right-hand portion of your screen, and I'll find an appropriate time to pose them to Eric during the presentation. He'll be taking a couple of pauses throughout, and we'll also have plenty of time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. You also receive the presentation by email ahead of time for your convenience to take notes on it if you wish. And we do have a couple of CFPs and CPAs on today's webinar, and you can receive 1.5 continuing education hours for attending today. So please get your board ID and last 4 digits of your social security number to me, as I have reporting requirements that I need to adhere to get your CE credits. So get that to me as soon as possible, please. Everyone will also receive a survey right after the presentation. This information is very important to us. We value your comments so we can tailor future webinars to meet our community's needs and ensure that we're doing a good job for you, the community that we serve. So very briefly, an overview about our firm. I should have had this pulled up ahead of time, my apologies. Let me get this up on my screen here. There we go. So we were founded in 2010 in Columbia by our president and principal attorney, Stephen Elville. We have a number of different practice areas here at Elville and Associates: estate special needs planning, elder law and elder care planning, estate trust administration, asset protection, guardianship, and tax planning. We have 6 attorneys, 12 staff members, and 5 locations. We're coming to you, I am live here from our Columbia location today. Our mission, as it always has been and always will be, is to provide practical solutions to our clients' needs through counseling, education, and the use of superior legal technical knowledge. And we focus a lot on education here. We do that through our planning processes with our clients, through over 100 educational workshops and webinars in the communities we serve each year, and also by way of our accredited client care program, which is very popular among many of our clients here at the firm. So we work every day with families with special needs loved ones with the ideals of client education, collaboration, and compassion in mind, and you should expect nothing less from us or any company you work for or with, for that matter. And we're always available for free consultations to discuss your family's needs, and look forward to being a resource to you in any way that you see fit, now or in the future when the time is right. So with that being said, let's start off with a brief poll to get you comfortable with participating in today's webinar. And I'm going to launch the poll. You'll see it pop up, and just select your answer, which is a yes or no, and that will close out the box that pops up. So the question is, how many of you are concerned about planning for your child's future because you, quote, don't know what you don't know? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. There we go. So it's either yes, I am concerned, or I feel okay, or I'm not concerned and feel prepared. So if you can just log your answers so we can get an idea of who's on our webinar today. Be interested to see what you have to say. Just take a few seconds to note your responses. Okay. So give it a few more seconds here. And with most everyone voting, it appears the overwhelming response is 76% saying, yes, I am concerned. 17% saying, I feel okay. And 4% saying, I'm not concerned and feel prepared. So thanks for participating. We appreciate it. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn the presentation over to Eric. So give us just a second to do that. And I'm going to turn my camera and mic off so I'm not a distraction. And Eric, it is.
Thank you, Jeff. The reason I put this slide together is because I'm like many of you, and I wasn't sure what I didn't know when my wife died back in 2012. And it's been a journey becoming a special needs advisor. I get asked frequently if I'm a financial advisor, and I want to clarify I am not. I do not work in the world of insurance or investments any longer. I'm focused 100% on helping families navigate the maze of benefits, resources, and services. And I work with insurance agents, financial advisors, and attorneys to help families connect the dots. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is just doing a brief overview of what those dots that you should be connecting are, hopefully helping you understand what the priorities are. Very often, I think families get a lot of well-meaning advice that makes things worse, makes things more confusing. So I want to try to eliminate some of that confusion today. And to start with, let's talk about the timeline that I'm going to be referencing. I think many of you have seen a similar model or have heard of something similar. Maybe it's based on age. And this is for anybody with an intellectual developmental disability, which is a topic today. And I know I have diagnosis at the beginning, even though some children may not receive a diagnosis until later in life, but for the purposes of this, we'll say they receive their diagnosis before they start school, and then post-high school is going to be assuming that they age out at 21, and a post-high school 18 to 21 is assuming that they don't get a diploma, but they're going to remain in school from 18 to 21. So the first thing that many of us are coming across is we go to a doctor because we notice something's different with our child, or perhaps as part of the pediatric wellness checks, the doctor notes that, hey, there's something going on. We think you ought to get your son or daughter checked. And this can be pretty overwhelming. I remember when this happened with my son, his original diagnosis was PDD-NOS, because they didn't want to give him a diagnosis of autism before he was 5 years old. So he got the PDD-NOS diagnosis around 2.5, 3 years old. And we really didn't know where to start. The doctors put us in touch with, we were in Connecticut, so they put us in touch with the Birth to 3. That's a great place to start. Maryland programs will have a lot of things to help you identify what resources are available for you. You know, if you have a child with Down syndrome, you reach out to National Down Syndrome Society with Autism Speaks. You know, you have several organizations for autism, you know, the Autism Society, Autism Speaks. And you want to look for those support groups of parents who have gone where you're at now, that have come through it already, because they can most often give you a very clear idea of what to expect as your child gets older and starts getting ready to transition to school. You're going to want to, I really encourage people to apply for services right away. DDA in Maryland. That's the Department of Developmental Disabilities Administration. Their services typically don't start until a child turns 21. However, the younger you can get the application in, that means you're in the system now, and there are other waivers that you may be eligible for. It also means once you're in the system, if something happens, you can go from, in quotes, future need to more of a critical or crisis, crisis resolution. And you want to make sure you're in the system. So if something happens, in my case, I lost my wife. I wasn't in the system, but if I had been, I could have reached out to DDA and asked for some support, because it would have been a crisis. But I didn't know about DDA until my son was 12. So I really encourage people to apply as soon as they get the diagnosis. And you also want to apply for the autism waiver. 2 different programs. They're both funded by Medicaid, so you can only get one of these at a time. But you want to apply as soon as you get the diagnosis. The autism waiver has, I believe it's an 8-year waiting list. Just be aware of that. But if you get it, it will pay for pretty much anything you need until your child turns 21. I have SSI on here. I want to say it is very difficult to get approved for supplemental security income through Social Security, because when a child is a minor, which means under the age of 18, they're going to be considering the parent's income and the parent's assets. So you can apply, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that you're going to be eligible for it. Depending on the diagnosis, you may also want to look into rare and expensive medical, which is another insurance program through the state. And that's going to typically be something that you would get through you would get more information from your pediatrician, and it's going to be, again, based on diagnosis. I have completed a financial plan on here. I want to clarify, very often young families don't necessarily have a lot of investable assets. I know I didn't when I was active duty in the military. So what may be more appropriate for you here, it may be as simple as working with somebody to figure out how much life insurance you need, getting that life insurance in place. You can do term insurance. It doesn't have to be an expensive solution, but you really want to make sure that you have something to protect your family in the event one or both parents pass away. I can tell you personal experience, my wife and I didn't have very much life insurance, and it was painful when my wife died, because the insurance we had wasn't enough to cover things like paying off the mortgage of my house. I lived in Maryland. We had a house in Connecticut, so I had to keep that house in Connecticut. And I kept it for about a year, trying to pay the mortgage in Connecticut and paying rent in Maryland. Very, very difficult. The other piece is my wife was primary caregiver. So I had to find somebody else to provide supports for my son, who at the time was 12 and couldn't be left home alone. So, when you have a young child, regardless of the disability, you can't leave that child alone. So if one of the parents works or both parents work, you need to find a way to either pay for daycare, pay for childcare, or pay for a provider. And that's where the insurance comes in. The other pieces of the financial plan would be making sure you're putting money into a retirement account, setting aside some money. If you have a child without a disability, putting money towards college, and just talking to somebody who is impartial and can help you figure out how much of a very limited budget, how much of it you can put where, and how much of it you should put in different places. As parents, speaking again from personally, we want to really take care of our children and give them opportunities we may not have had. There are fee-only financial planners out there that will charge you a flat fee. You don't necessarily have to work with one. There are also independent insurance agents out there that you can work, because I really, really, really cannot stress enough, you need life insurance to protect your family in the event of something happening to you. The estate plan is the same thing. Elville and Associates is a great example of a firm that you want to work with to put your estate plan in place. maybe you don't necessarily need a special needs trust yet because you have a young child. It's unclear often just how impacted by their disability that child is going to be, but you're still going to need a trust, because if you pass away and the money goes, you have life insurance, it can't go to a minor child. The attorneys can help you with what the actual structure should look like, but you're going to want to put things in place like a healthcare proxy so you can make decisions for what to do in the event that your spouse can't make decisions for themselves. My wife went into a coma. I was able to make those decisions for her, but my in-laws and I weren't necessarily always in agreement with what I was recommending. So if you have all of this written down, then there really is no discussion, or at least it's an easier discussion to have if the time comes about what your spouse or significant other wants. And that the same goes for having a will, where things are going to go, a guardian for your minor child. So if something happens to you, who's going to take over when you're gone? This is another case where it's not enough to just talk to an attorney. You also want to talk to whoever you are going to name as the guardian. You need to talk to them and make sure they're okay with it. If they already have children, are they ready to take on the responsibility of another child, even though this may seem like a very distant or unrealistic thing that it probably won't happen. It could happen, so you want to make sure that whoever you're naming is okay with you naming them and they're ready to step to the plate. And finally, apply for low intensity support systems. So services. Low intensity support services is a lottery that provides up to $2,000 grants for services for your child. And it can be anything from, I used it for music therapy. I used it with the Arc of Montgomery County's After All program after my wife died. I know people have used it to purchase computers and other assistive technology. So there's a lot of different, it's very flexible, a lot of different things you can do. If there's no limitations for applying, other than if you're receiving autism waiver services, I don't think you can apply for lists. This is a checklist that I use for birth to 5. I don't typically give this to clients because there's a lot on here. I want to highlight some things that are not on here. When you have a child ages 5 and under, now is not necessarily the time for you to be worrying about an ABLE account necessarily, unless you have gotten all of these other things to taken care of. You can certainly open an ABLE account, but when I'm talking to clients, I'm recommending an ABLE account when the child gets closer to the age of 18 and is ready to start receiving federal benefits or other means tested benefits, because that's really, in my opinion, when the ABLE account gets the most bang for its buck, because you can start putting money into it. It can start gaining in value, and it's not going to affect your benefits. Now, if you have grandparents who want to give your child money, or you have other money coming in that what is directed towards your child, certainly an ABLE account is perfect to put the money in there. But for many of the families I'm working with, they have so much else on their plate that the ABLE account becomes almost a distraction. And the same thing with guardianship. A lot of families will start talking about guardianship or worrying about guardianship even when the child is really, really young, and it's too soon. We don't know what your child's going to need or not need. So focus on getting your child ready to go into the school. Focus on determining if your child needs assistive technology, what that assistive technology may look like, making sure you're connected with any medical providers, specialists that you need, applying for DDA, applying for the autism waiver, and just really beginning to learn what's down the road for you with your child's diagnosis. So let's talk about what happens when they go into school. Before I jump into the school years, I want to pause a second and give Jeff an opportunity to see if there's any questions yet. I tend to talk fast, and I want to make sure I'm not talking too fast.
Thanks, Eric. No specific questions just yet. So I think we're in good shape right now. Don't hesitate to ask questions, everybody. We'll make sure we get to them very quickly.
So thank you, Jeff. The school years are, when I say school years, I'm talking ages 6 to 18. So there's a lot going on in these years. You've got the introduction of puberty, you've got 3 transitions, you have elementary to middle, middle to high school, and then high school transitioning into adulthood. When my son transitioned from middle to high school, we used an education advocate. Some people use them when they're transitioning from elementary to middle. And this is really when the elementary and middle school is really when I would be focusing on your child's education. If they have an IEP or 504, is it appropriate? Do you know how to read an IEP or 504? This is not my area of expertise. This is why I hired an education advocate. I'm a big fan of working with professionals who can explain the complicated and make it simple. The IEPs are typically very large documents. There's a lot going on. When you hire an advocate, it doesn't have to be because you think there's something wrong with the school or that you think they're not doing something or they should be doing something else. I used my advocate because I needed for lack of a better term, a calmer voice. I get pretty passionate, and I didn't want the IEP, the members of the IEP to feel that I was, attacking them or angry. So I hired the advocate to really be my voice. I also didn't agree with the recommendation to have my child pursue a certificate program. When my son was younger, I really wanted him to get a diploma. And as time went on, it became more and more apparent he couldn't keep up with the school age work or age appropriate work. And so the IEP was recommending a certificate path. And then, so the other reason I hired the advocate was I was convinced that the advocate and I the advocate would see it my way. And it turns out the advocate agreed with the school, and my son is on a certificate program. And in, looking back on it, absolutely, why not? And I'm glad he's on the certificate path now. He'll get out, he's in the Frederick Success Program, and he'll age out at 21. So therapies, a lot of these therapies will be provided, or maybe, I gotta be careful, maybe provided in the IEP if it can be shown that it benefits the child's educational outcomes. You may want additional therapies that you may have to pay for out of pocket, or you may request your insurance for. I know when my son was in elementary school, we paid for speech and occupational therapy out of pocket. My insurance didn't fund enough hours back then. So we talked to the doctor and we went ahead and paid out of pocket. Good time to start introducing your child to different hobbies and sports, finding out what they like to do. We have kids enjoying exercise now, keen. You have Special Olympics. You've got several physical trainers out there who focus on individuals with disabilities. Great opportunities to introduce children to getting fit and getting active. Again, and we have adaptive sports. So even if a child uses a wheelchair or something, there are opportunities for them to participate. The psychological evaluation is on here because this is something that the school will likely do, and they're probably going to have follow-ups every 3 years or so. Again, this is not my area of expertise, but I don't believe you need to get a private evaluation every 3 or 4 years. Talking to Dr. Resnick with Resnick and Associates, I did an interview with her that'll be coming up shortly. She believes it may be appropriate to get one evaluation done through the lifetime of while the child's in school in terms of giving a private evaluation, but most of the time, getting the evaluations from the school are fine. The reason those evaluations matter is when you are applying for SSI or you're applying for DDA or anything else, they're going to be reviewing the medical records, and they want to see the history of the child's diagnosis. And they want to see what the history has been. How has the child treatment's been going? How has the child responded to treatment? What limitations are there? In some cases, does the child have an intellectual disability or not? Again, it all depends on the disability. So that's everything you're going to be doing from elementary to middle. Again, if you wanted to look at opening an ABLE account, you could certainly do that. You should be updating your estate plan. I typically tell people to review their documents every 5 years, but I would consult with your attorney to make sure what's appropriate. You know, if something significant changes, you get divorced, you get married, you have another child, you're going to want to review things like your estate plan. You're also going to want to review your financial plan. This is when you start looking at your child's getting older. Maybe you bought a bigger house, you have a bigger mortgage, maybe you're earning more money now. Maybe you have additional children and you want to start looking into college for those children. So it's starting to get a little more complicated. Your team should be getting bigger, the team of individuals that you're working with. This is when, if you have a lot of medical bills, making sure you're looking into keeping track of those medical bills for tax purposes. Things like driving to and from therapies. If you have to, let's say you live in Montgomery County and you're driving to Baltimore for evaluations at Kidney Krieger or Hopkins, that mileage counts as medical. If your child has special diets, you know, those are additional things that could be considered medical expenses, and working with an accountant can help you get those identified. When you age into high school and you want to start talking transition planning at age 14, 16, 17, you're going to want to decide, does your child want to drive? They should be getting a state ID. My son does not drive, so we just went to the MVA and got him a state ID. Many of the Department of Rehabilitative Services the different counties, many of them will have programs to help young drivers determine if they can drive. I don't want to speak for every DOORS out there, every Department of Rehabilitative Services throughout Maryland, because I understand every county has a different demand on their services. So I don't want to promise something that maybe your county doesn't provide. Pre-employment transition services is something many families may not have heard of. It's a program through the Department of Rehabilitative Services. That's a mouthful. I'm just going to say DOORS from now on. DOORS offers pre-employment transition services, or PREETs, from the age of 14 to 21. And what this is an introduction for students to get real work experience before they enter the workforce. And this is geared to help people find jobs that will pay them so they don't have to go onto public benefits. That doesn't mean you shouldn't or you won't qualify, but it definitely helps. My son went through the PREETs program last year. He worked part-time, 3 days a week at an insurance company in Frederick, and he was getting paid salary, and we just put that money into his ABLE account. The making money while you're a student is not a concern, even if you're collecting SSI, because there is a earned income exclusion for students, and it's about $7,900 a year. So if you have a student 14 to 21 who's receiving SSI, really 18 to 21 receiving SSI, and they're working, you have the earned income exclusion, so you don't have to worry about it. But you want to look into pre-employment transition services at age 14, 15, and try to get the student in there. DOORS will help them identify what skills they have, what jobs they're interested in. There's a lot of training around how to self-advocate for yourself, when to disclose your disability, what you have to disclose, what you don't have to disclose, etc. I have in here introducing your child to law enforcement. There have been, unfortunately, too many cases of individuals with disabilities who have died at the hands of law enforcement. I believe The state of Maryland has been doing especially Montgomery County, but Maryland as a whole has been doing a very good job of educating law enforcement about the disability community. And Pathfinders for Autism is phenomenal. They're out there. They have a representative going around the state educating law enforcement. But it's important for you to tell your child how to act around law enforcement. Now, you can't control if a child stims or has involuntary actions or whatever, but you may be able to minimize what triggers them if you expose them early on, or talk to your son's therapist, and if your child does react, and find out if there's a way to minimize those reactions. Get to know the law enforcement in your community, so if they see your child out and about, they can tell, is that behavior that's normal and expected, or is there something going on? Maybe they should get involved and see if everything's okay. So college planning, not every child is going to go to college. Some children may want to pursue other higher education, and some children may not want to or be able to pursue any college, any further education. There's a lot of programs in Maryland for individuals who want to pursue higher education. So let's talk about college first. You have for-profit companies like College Living Experience that will help different learners through one-to-one counseling and things. You have every college will have a disability services office. Now it's up to the college age student to advocate for themselves. So when the child's in high school, this is a great time to start teaching them how to advocate for their needs. It's also a great time to start teaching them how to live on their own. And I don't mean jump into the deep end by saying, here, you got your laundry, go take care of yourself. But you should absolutely start small. Maybe it's, here, help me sort the laundry and explain why. Or here, help me load the washer. Scaffold it, build those skills up. We want our children to be as independent as possible, whatever that means. In some cases, it means your child's going to have personal supports, but it doesn't mean that the child can't have a voice in their future and have some say in what they're doing. And the earlier that you can start giving them the opportunity to make those choices, helping them understand the difference between a good choice and a bad choice, and to some degree letting them live with the consequences of their choices, in my opinion, the better. And again, these are all things that I've done with my son, and there are some things my son can't do that I've just accepted. When my wife died, my son was 12 years old. He was completely dependent on her for everything, bathing, toileting, the whole 9 yards. He'll be 21 this year, and he's capable of doing his laundry. He's capable of putting his laundry away. He's capable of giving me a grocery list and making himself certain dinners. Capable doesn't always mean willing. He is a 20-year-old young man, and in some ways, emotionally, probably younger than that. And so there's a give and take there of how much to push and how much to just, okay, this is something that he's not going to, get done. But I really want to encourage parents to stop looking at their child as a child. Try to give them the opportunity to be their age. And I don't mean flipping a switch and saying, oh, you're 15, here you go. Or you're 17, here's the keys to a car. But start, as your child gets older, start giving them more responsibility. Start letting them have more of a voice. If it's only, hey, do you want chicken or steak for dinner tomorrow night? That's still a choice, and you're still teaching them how to make choices. So that's enough of my soapbox. Again, I have checklists for all of this. You can see that the checklists seem to be getting longer. Because I didn't know for sure when I would be meeting people in their journey, a lot of what's on these checklists or rehashing things or reviewing things that were on earlier checklists. So if you started working on things right away when your child was born, and now your son or daughter is 15, a good chunk of what's on this you may not have to worry about. You may be able to just skip down to employment. One thing I didn't touch on with employment is resumes. You do want to start helping them figure out employment, helping them draft a resume. I love Google for Google Docs and things like that. And again, the self-advocacy is a big piece. And Jeff, before I jump into the 18 and 21 cliff, I want to pause again, see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I think we have one. I'm going to check a little bit further down the list here to see if we have more. One question, could you please, again, note the name of the program that helps young adults or students find jobs?
Sure, the program for young adults and students is called Pre-Employment Transition Services. And it's offered through the DOORS, Department of Rehabilitative Services. We have time. I can see if I can pull it up for people, Jeff, because I talk fast. So do you think that'd be helpful, Jeff?
Yeah. Everybody, if you think that would be helpful and you want to note it in the chat feature or question area, if we have time, Eric, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, we do.
Absolutely.
I talk really fast, so I want to.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I want to make sure people get the most out of this. So I don't know if you can do a screenshot of this, Jeff, but this is the website, Pre-Employment Transition Services, and then you can come over here, and you have a fact sheet. So I want to highlight here, because the question I get, you can homeschool. So if you're homeschooling your child, that's considered enrolled. And you can see there's quite a bit that they offer.
I'll go ahead in my follow-up email to everybody when I send out our video link, either later today or first thing tomorrow. I'll include this link in that message to everybody, Eric.
Cool. Thank you, Jeff.
You. Sure. Let's see, we might have one more question or maybe a comment. Let's see here. It says DOORS services. Wait a minute here. DOORS services in Howard County has a waiting list. We applied at 14 and were contacted for services at 17, so don't wait too long, is the comment from one of our attendees.
That's a great point. That's wow. Wow. But it reinforces why you want to get on, why you want to start working on this as soon as you can. I mean, thank you for sharing that. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to fill time till 11:30, Jeff. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay, Eric. No, that's fine. However it flows is certainly fine. And we'll leave further time for questions. And we have up until 11:30. If we don't fill that time frame, that is certainly fine. Not a problem at all. We have one more comment. Let's see here. Let me just read through it. Looks a little bit long here. Let me read it. Services for deaf have come a long way. When driver's license, MVA card for car, but in emergencies, accidents, and predator situations, police tend not to ask deaf any questions, just listen to others, including the predator. is there a position in the police department that has jurisdiction over these concerns?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I would have to reach out to the police department and ask. I imagine there must be, but I don't want to say for sure. I think every county would have a different representative.
So what I'll do, Eric, is I'll copy this question and note the person that asked it, and maybe we can follow up with her as soon as possible.
Right, and I'll reach out. I'll see what I can find on my end.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are all the comments and questions for now. Thank you.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, one more question. We're kind of coming in now. Do other states have doors?
Yes, every state has some kind of Department of Rehabilitative Services, although they may not all be called doors. But yes, they all have the same.
Yeah, can one go to doors in a different county from where you live?
I don't think so. I think you have to work with the county that you live in.
Okay, and another question, a little bit unclear on the wording here, but can you address, can you address application for SSI, how to do that and when?
Ooh. Okay, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can apply online. You can call into the Social Security Administration local office, or you can make an appointment and go to the local office. If you're going to go to the Social Security Administration office, you want to make sure you go towards the middle of the month, and you want to go there early in the morning because the line forms really early. And the beginning of the month is when people are going to be going because they have payment issues or what have you. So the line is going to be even longer. So if you're going to apply for Social Security, or if you're doing anything with Social Security, I encourage people to go towards the middle of the month and make sure you go early in the morning, right when they open up. When to apply? This is a little more difficult. I will typically recommend that families don't apply for Social Security until the year their child turns 18. You can apply the month your child turns 18, and then expect that your application is going to be not denied. I don't have the exact figure, but I think it's close to 70% of initial applications for SSI are denied, and you just have to stick with it. Although you do not need an attorney, you can hire an attorney to help you with the application process. This is what I did because I just don't have the bandwidth. When I retired from the military, I got my fill of going against big behemoth bureaucracies when I went with and filed for all my VA claims. So when it came time for me to file for my son's Social Security, I just hired a disability attorney who submitted the claim for me, and then I worked with him. Regardless of how you do it, you're going to need to submit all of your supporting documentation from the time your child was diagnosed. Now that means medical documents, IEP 504 documents, the diagnosis itself, if there's anything, and you never want to submit the originals. You want to make sure that you're submitting copies, because if anything gets lost, you don't want to be out of the paperwork. So what I did is I scanned everything, I uploaded it to Google Drive, and then I just shared my those documents in that folder with the attorney from the Google Drive, and then he went from there. I hope that answers the question about SSI and how to apply, what you need to do, and when to apply. If not, I'll try to do a deeper dive into it.
Very good. One more question. As a grandparent of a 14-year-old, what are the most important and helpful steps we can take to help our granddaughter and her parents?
Awesome question. So
Our note: our granddaughter is 4, not 14. Additional comment.
okay. So at 4 years old, mom and your granddaughter's parents may be overwhelmed just by coming to terms with the diagnosis. So I would start with seeing if they've done any planning, gently nudging them or having that conversation with them about, have you talked about what happens if something happens to you? I don't know if you would be okay with becoming guardian of your granddaughter if something happened to mom and dad, or if you would, that would be something that you could tell them, hey, we're happy to be listed as as the guardian should something happen to you. Talk to them about letting them know that you've done your estate planning, that you're taken care of, so they don't have to worry about you. Maybe that sounds silly, but I will tell you, a lot of parent families are becoming worried because they care about their parents as well as their children. And if they know that you've done your planning, then you are taking a weight off of them. They don't have to know the particulars, but for example, let's say you want to do something for your granddaughter where maybe you want to leave the house you live in to her when you're gone, because hopefully you're going to live a nice long life, and when you're gone, this will give her a place to live with supports, for example. Well, if you talk to your granddaughter's parents about that, they can tell you, well, that's great. We have a special needs trust set up already, so we'll just make sure that you put that in your estate plan that you want the house to go to the special needs trust. And that's one example. It's what I would really do though is sit down with your granddaughter's parents and have a conversation about what do they need. Is there anything that they're worried about that maybe you can connect them with? Do they know about DDA? Do they know, have they applied for DDA? Do they know about the autism waiver if the granddaughter's diagnosis is autism? Have they applied for that? Do they know about LIS funding? Have they applied for that? Oftentimes what I find is parents just don't know about these things. So even if it's nothing more than taking the slides and going to them with the checklist that's in the slide, and because your granddaughter's 4, using the one that says birth to 5, just go down the list with them and say, have you addressed these? Your granddaughter's parents better than I do, so the best way to approach them where they won't feel offended or feel like you're stepping on their toes. You certainly want to. It's a fine line, and I get that. But I would talk to them and just have a conversation.
Thanks, Eric. Do have a couple more here. Next one is, are there other programs that a child is eligible for only if they received SSDI that would want one to apply earlier, like Medicaid or anything?
Are there programs? So,
would you like me to repeat that?
Well, I think I understand. If you apply for SSI in Maryland and you're approved, you automatically get Medicaid. You want to apply for SSI before the age of 22, regardless of what state you live in, because if the child is found disabled before the age of 22 and meets the Social Security definition of disability, then the child becomes eligible for the disabled adult child benefit through Social Security. What that means is the child will receive 50% of the parent's retirement benefit when the parent retires, or 50% of the parent's disability benefit. So I'll try to it's difficult to do this over a webinar, but let's say when you retire, you're going to get $2,000. Your child is getting $783 a month because they're getting the full amount of SSI in Maryland, and you retire and you start collecting your Social Security. Your child's benefit is going to go from $783 of SSI to $1,000 SSDI, Social Security Disability Income. And 23 months after the child starts receiving the SSDI, they'll automatically be enrolled in Medicare. So yes, there are some advantages to applying for SSI early, but again, if you apply before the age of 18, they're going to be looking at the parent's income, and they're going to be deeming resources from the parent to the child. Deeming, that's just a fancy way of saying they're going to say whatever you're earning. There's a formula they have to determine how much of what you earn they're going to apply to the child. So, and then food stamps. I think in Maryland, to apply for SNAP, which is food stamps, you have to be 22 or 23. I know when I applied for my son when he was 20, the answer I got was he wasn't old enough yet. Section 8 housing, which is one of the housing vouchers for low income. I want to clarify, low income is not disability specific. So if you get a low income housing voucher, you're applying for one, you're competing with everybody who's going for that housing voucher. It's not just people with disabilities. So those are some of the other benefits that you can apply for if you have a disability and your child's 18, that are like SSI and SSDI. There's also the Monocacy Foundation. I don't know if it's only in Frederick County, but the Monocacy Foundation offers grants for families that have disabilities. Those are the big ones that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Another question, will a special needs trust affect SSI?
Wow, Jeff would be really good at, you guys would be really good at this one, Jeff. No, it should not. If it's done properly, a special needs trust should not affect SSI. And this is why when I'm working with families, I really want them to work with an attorney who's very familiar with the world of special needs and isn't just doing one special needs trust a year or so, because it has to be written properly. Stephen and Elville Associates and the attorneys with Elville and Associates can go into deeper detail, but there's two types of special needs trust. You have a first party, where if somebody is getting money or a settlement in their name, it has to go in that. And there's a third party where everything else can go into. But if the trust is not written properly, you could have your Social Security benefits affected. The only way a properly written special needs trust would affect your Social Security benefits is if the trustee uses the trust to pay for housing or food. You shouldn't do that. I mean, the trust will tell you not to do that. And but if the trustee spends it on the wrong things, you could have your SSI reduced because of in-kind support and maintenance, meaning your special needs trust is paying for food and or housing. Therefore, in the eyes of the Social Security Administration, you do not need SSI to pay for food or housing. Hope that wasn't too confusing.
Oh, very helpful. Last question for now, I believe. Actually, I might have one more after this. Do we have to set up the special needs trust once they are diagnosed, or it will be set up when the parents die?
I think this is a better question for the attorney. My first special needs trust was set up as a testamentary trust, meaning it would kick in when I died. The trusts I have now, I have a first party and a third party, and both of them are set up and they're both funded. I have $10 in a savings account for both. And that's because I'm a single parent and I don't want, if anything happens to me, I don't want there to be any hiccups. I want everything to roll right into the trust. So I think that's a better question for an attorney to answer as in terms of when to set it up. I would say you want to get your estate plan done right now, but with regards to, do you need the trust up and running and funded now, or can it come into play when you die? I would defer to an attorney on that.
And thank you, Eric. And the last question for now, what is DDA and where do you apply?
So DDA is the Department of Developmental Disabilities, and I'm going to do another show and tell for this one. So Jeff, this is where you go. This is their homepage. And this is also from here, you can get to lists, low intensity supports. And I believe you can apply for service. And then you have the different waivers over here. So, you know, go to the website. I have, Jeff, what I can do is I can send you a PDF of the application. But yeah, that's, you go to the website and you should be able to find it from there.
Okay, very good. And last one, I keep saying that, but you keep bringing up great thoughts in people's minds. But you can pay for those things with an ABLE account with no penalty, right? I'm assuming she's alluding to certain items that may be perhaps in a special needs trust.
You can pay for food and housing from an ABLE account. It's considered a qualified disability expense. It falls under living expenses.
Yeah.
And living expenses are qualified disability expenses. The range of what's a qualified disability expense is pretty broad. You know, things like housing is one, and that's really best practice. What I recommend to families is set up a special needs trust, fund it with life insurance, investments, real estate, however you're going to fund it, and then set it up so the trustee will take a distribution at the beginning of the year. This year, for example, it would be $15,000. Fully fund the ABLE account and use the ABLE account to pay for your housing, your rent, or whatever else you want to do for the individual.
Okay. I think that's it for now, Eric.
Cool.
Thank you.
So let's dive into 18 to adulthood. So there's two options when a child turns 18. They can leave school with a diploma, or they can continue their education until age 21. What's important to note is if they leave school at 18, they're not going to get any services until 21. So in some cases, there's a lot of benefit to staying in school till 21, because the child can continue to receive the therapies that they're receiving as part of their IEP, and they would still be eligible for pre-employment transition services through DOORS. They would have all of those benefits available to them. If they leave school at 18, they can work with DOORS to get a job, but you may be struggling with what to fill their day with, especially if they're not going to college. You're going to want to apply for, this is when you definitely want to apply for SSI when you're getting ready to turn 18. You need to have a conversation about, are you going to do guardianship or support decision making? This is another conversation better for an attorney. From a parent point of view, I want to tell you that guardianship is not parenting 2.0. When you become somebody's legal guardian, the state is finding them to be legally incompetent to make any decisions. So I really do my best to encourage people to think of less restrictive means. Maybe it's conservatorship, so the person doesn't manage their money, you're managing the money for them, but they're still able to make their own decisions. Maybe it's a limited power of attorney. The attorney can help you with what those different options are. Full disclosure, I am my son's legal guardian. So I want to be clear. I know there's times when it's required, but I don't think it should be the immediate go-to. And that's personal bias, and I own that. If you have an adult son, you want to make sure they register for selective service. That is all males, regardless of their disability. It takes 2 seconds to go to the selective service website. And the reason you want to do that is if you don't register, they may lose the opportunity to get a federal job. Some of the federal and state benefits may be tied to, did they register for the draft? Registering for the draft doesn't mean they're automatically going to get drafted should a draft ever come about. Right now, it's only males. Women do not have to enroll. As far as I understand it, it's based on the gender you were born with. I haven't seen anything on the website outlining anything different than that. Students, 18 and older can vote, whether they want to or not. That's up to them, but they have the option to register. Start thinking about housing. This is when you have a conversation with them. Where do they want to live? Where do you want them to live? You can freeze their credit. Now, you can freeze their credit as children. It's just additional steps to do that. I definitely encourage you as the parent to freeze your own credit. It's free now. You can go to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and you can freeze your credit. It's very, very simple to do. You can, it used to cost you money to thaw it. You don't have to do that now. And what freezing credit does is it means nobody can open any new credit in your name. Now, if you have credit cards, people can still steal from you using the current credit cards, but nobody can open any new credit. And that's why I encourage people with children who have disabilities to go ahead and freeze their credit, because you don't want somebody to steal their identity and run up a lot of credit in their name. So that's the 18 to 21. And then when you get to be 21 and older, this is when in Maryland, transitioning youth funding kicks in. Your funding, if you have a child who has a disability, excuse me, and has been in the schools, when they leave, you decide, do they want to go self-directed or do you want to use agencies? If you want to do self-directed, then you're going to work with DDA to create a budget and put supports in place. If you want to use an agency, you're going to want to start about a year out, 2 years out, interviewing the different agencies. You do not have to stay in the county that you're in. So if you live in Carroll County, but your child wants to live in Anne Arundel County, your child can do that. You would start looking for agencies that can support your child in Anne Arundel County. And that's because DDA is statewide, it's not county specific. Now, if you move from one region to the other, there might be some additional conversations you have to have with the regional DDA, but the funding will follow the person anywhere in the state. Have a personal life. A lot of children, young adults, especially with disabilities, may not have much of a social life. So this can be a good time for you to help your child explore what kind of personal life they want to have. What type of legacy do you want? That doesn't necessarily mean you want to leave your children millions of dollars, but what things what's on your radar? Are you charitable? Are you caring for your parents? And then if you don't have guardianship of your child, make sure they do an estate plan for themselves. Make sure they have a healthcare proxy. And this goes for any children you have that are not disabled, that are over the age of 18. You're going to want to make sure they have their own estate plans and things in place as well. And again, this is where Elville and Associates can help you with all this, because if you have a 20-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son with disabilities, and you want to do an estate plan for both of them, it's not going to be as complicated as if you have a 19-year-old son that you need a special needs trust for and you need guardianship. It's not going to be that as complicated or as expensive. And then think about what's going to happen for health insurance. If they are not eligible for SSI or Medicaid, what types of health insurance are they going to get when they're 26 and they come off of your health insurance? Are they working? Are they able to get health insurance through work? If you're a retired military or if you're a federal government employee, in some cases, there are opportunities as well, I think, with Montgomery County school teachers and some other jobs. You may be able to keep your child on your health insurance for the rest of their life because they have a disability. You just have to prove it. So these are all considerations that you want to start thinking about. And then for yourself, if your child is getting SSI at 19, 20, that means you may not want to take your Social Security until at least full retirement age, 66 and 6 months or 67, because you don't want to reduce the benefit your child will receive when you retire and when you die. So this is the ending of the checklist. These are all checklists that I work off of when I'm working with families. As I said, I don't give these to families because they can be very often quite overwhelming to see everything. You have the slides. I'm happy that you use them to the best of your ability. I'm certainly here if you ever need me. And I have one follow-up where I need to follow up about the police department to address concerns if somebody can't speak for themselves, with the deaf community. Jeff, is there any other questions?
Thanks, Eric. We do have a couple of questions. First one is, how does a family plan for retirement for a disabled adult who is able to work but has very little retirement funds?
That's a great question. And this is where you're going to want to, very often you're going to want, as a parent, you're probably going to need to work with a financial advisor or somebody or a financial planner to determine how you can subsidize what your child is earning. So your child can work and make a low wage, and maybe you have to subsidize that with money from a special needs trust or something similar to help them. So let's say they make $1,000 a month, but they need $4,000 a month to pay all of their bills. Well, they could get that extra $3,000 a month from a trust that you leave them with life insurance. Or if they're alive right now, maybe you're subsidizing them by giving them extra money as you can. Now, how do you plan for your retirement? It's going to be a little more challenging because you have to start thinking about what is your retirement going to look like? What is it going to cost you? Maybe you can save some money by downsizing into a smaller house if that's something you want to do, and then you can take your investments and you can fund your retirement, and you can have life insurance to help your child when you're gone. But it's really hard to say definitively how you can do it without talking to a financial advisor.
Next question, Eric. I am not my daughter's guardian, and she is living in a group home now. After my death, will she receive 50% of my Social Security benefits?
If your daughter is receiving SSI and she qualified before the age of 22, then yes, she should automatically get the disabled adult child benefit from Social Security. Now, I don't know what the structure is with whatever residential program she's working in, if she's paying them rent or how that works. That may take some of the money from, but the Social Security should automatically shift over when you die or when you retire, if she's receiving SSI and has been receiving it before the age of 22.
Next comment, question. You haven't mentioned power of attorney in healthcare. We've come to learn that it is very important to get this set up before age 18 so that parents can continue to have a role in this decision making. I think you kind of alluded to that in your thoughts about estate planning, but would you like to comment further about that, Eric?
Thank you, Jeff. And I apologize if I didn't mention it. It is absolutely part of a good estate plan. I do think families should be talking to attorneys to set up the durable power of attorney, the healthcare proxy. I'm a fan of 5 wishes as well. But anything and everything you can do to make sure that tools are in place. So if somebody, for whatever, let's say somebody gets in a car accident and can't speak for themselves, you can not only speak for them, but doctors can speak to you about the treatment that's necessary and their current status. When somebody turns 18, because of HIPAA and other things, all of their everything medical becomes private. It is not, it's not shareable, even though you're their parents. Now, you may be with doctors that have known you forever and they'll share it with you, but it doesn't, they cannot be held to share it once the child turns 18. So everything that the child sees the doctor for becomes private. So yes, you do need to get a healthcare proxy. You need to get advanced directives. And that's when you go to sit down with your attorney to get your estate plan done, the attorney is going to really help you with all of that.
Thanks, Eric. We have one more question that probably would be something for me, even though I'm not an attorney. Can you give us a cost range parents can expect if they hire an attorney to develop a trust? Also a range for hiring a lawyer to apply for SSI. Would you like me to try to address that?
Yes, please, because it really depends on where you live and the attorney you go to. And
yeah, and again, I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, though I've been through hundreds of presentations and could probably give a presentation if I wanted to. I'll say it, and I don't know what other attorneys charge. At Elville and Associates, and I appreciate Eric's presentation. I think we should give him a virtual hand right now for the great information and his personal stories, which I think added a great value to the presentation. Regarding planning at Elville and Associates, special needs planning is something that is a primary focus and a passion that our attorneys have. It is what we come to work to do each day. The best families that we meet here at the firm, I would say, without hesitation, are parents and families that have loved ones with special needs. So we enjoy working with them very much. As far as costs go, it's not one specific cost because every family situation is very different. So all initial consultations, I can say, are free to understand your situation, kind of create a roadmap for where you might want to go, with your planning and your loved one's planning, and just depending on your resources, what your planning is going to look like will depend on what the cost will be to create that plan and maintain it going forward. So it's I'll throw out, it could be anywhere from a couple $1,000s to $8,000. I'm just throwing out full ballpark figures out there. Everybody's situation is different. We'll certainly, I know, work with you to try to find a cost that's going to fit your needs. as well as a plan that's going to fit your family's situation. So we focus a lot on education, a lot on counseling, try to go above and beyond where other attorneys do not. And it certainly takes a little more time and effort on our part and more on your part as well. But that's where the partnership piece comes in. And that's where successful planning also comes in to ensure that your plan is going to work as intended now and in the future. So we'd appreciate the opportunity to be a resource to you, and give us a call or email me, and we can certainly get that process started either in our conference room here at the office, or if you're interested in a video conference, we can also set that up as well if you're more comfortable in that capacity. So as far as an SSI, SSDI attorney, we also have one here that specializes solely in that here at Elville & Associates. Megan McCullough is her name. She's a wonderful woman. She will help people apply for those services. She primarily helps people with the appeal process for SSI and the like. So as far as costs for that, I would have to ask her specifically about that.
I can speak to that, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead if you want to run with that.
Typically, the disability attorneys that I've met they don't get paid until the Social Security pays out, and exactly. It can be as high as 25% of the first payment.
Yeah. So I believe that's right where we are as well. Yeah. So no payment unless there's a successful appeal. So
right, it's paid by Social Security, not by the member, not by the individual.
Yeah. So Megan's been with our firm for 5 years. She's a partner. She's a member of the super lawyers list by the state of Maryland for 5 consecutive years. Very, very good resource. Also works in our estate and trust division and works in some special needs planning, but has a big focus in SSI and SSDI as well. So we're here to be a resource for you. Eric, I want to thank you. I assume that I missed at the very end, your information is on the end of your presentation if people want to get a hold of you for further information.
Yeah, it's on my slides, or Planning Across the Spectrum. We have a YouTube channel as well. So if you go to planningacrossthespectrum.com, you can visit. You'll find me on the website, or you can go to YouTube and look for Planning Across the Spectrum, and we have a lot of videos there about what I covered in this.
Great. Well, thank you. Last couple things. We have a video channel on our website, which we recently redesigned. You can check out our recent Maryland ABLE presentation that was offered by the outreach coordinator, Kelly Nelson of Maryland ABLE, if you want to learn more about that. We also have our webinar, What Families Need to Know About Planning for a Loved One with Special Needs. That's kind of our global special needs planning presentation. You can check out if you'd like to learn more about that. We have a live one coming up in August. If you'd like to sign up for that, invitations will be coming out in the next few days for that as well. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Right after the webinar is over, you'll get a survey. Please give us your feedback on today's webinar. Again, want to thank Eric for his expertise and really appreciate his partnership with the firm and sharing his knowledge with us today. Want to say it was just a job well done, and this is such important information that a lot of people just don't know. You don't know what you don't know, as we started out saying at the beginning. So thanks again for your time, Eric. We really appreciate it. So I'll check to see if there's any last questions or comments, and then I think we'll go ahead and end today's webinar and call it a success. Let's see here. This was terrific. Thank you. So thank you very much for that comment. And I think that's it. So
Awesome.
thank you, everybody. We appreciate your participation and support of our Belleville workshop series. Eric, thanks again. I think maybe we can try to do it again sometime, maybe in the late fall or winter. Certainly seems like there's a need out there. And thank you to our attendees for making it possible. So please stay safe and be well. And we look forward to seeing you in another webinar soon. Take care.